Welcome to your personalized deep dive. And this time, we're tackling Naruto. Shippuden and you have given us quite a mixed bag here. We've got reviews, reflections, personal notes even, like how did this show hit you kind of stuff. Glowing praise, complaints about fillers, people obsessed with the music. I mean, we got it all.
Yeah, it really is interesting how this show, even among like diehard fans, gets such different reactions. Some people call it a masterpiece and others say it's a complete mess. It's got to be a sign that we're dealing with something more than just like your typical shonen action show, you know?
Right. And that's exactly what we're here to figure out. Not just like what happens in the plot, but like why should we care? Is Naruto Shippuden one of those shows that like changes you, or is it just a fun way to kill some time? Let's dive into these reviews and see if we can find your answer.
You know, the first thing that really jumps out is just how much people are talking about the characters and how they develop. It's not just like, did Naruto get stronger? It's more like, how did all this stuff that happens to him actually like change how he sees the world?
Okay, so like the power-ups are cool and all, but it's the internal growth that really gets people hooked.
Exactly. And the stuff you gave me highlights some pretty compelling examples. Let's take Itachi Uchiha, for example. At first, he seems like this totally heartless bad guy, right? But then as you learn more about him, you see there's like a whole tragic past, all these impossible choices he had to make. He sacrificed everything for his village. I mean, even did some truly awful things, all because of love for his people.
Wow, that's some pretty heavy stuff for an anime. I mean, wow.
Yeah.
But yeah, morally gray characters, those are always the ones that get people talking. So does the show actually say whether he was right or wrong, or is that left up to the viewer?
That's what's so great about it. They show you all of Itachi's actions, the good and the bad, and then they let you figure out what it all means. Is he a hero or a villain or something in between? It really makes you think about what justice even means in a world like the ninja world, where things are never black and white.
So even if you disagree with what he did, you can at least see why he did it. And then there's Naruto himself. It seems like most of these reviewers really love him. Is it just because of that whole never give up thing, or is there something more to it?
It goes deeper than that. I mean, think about it. Naruto is constantly surrounded by darkness, betrayal, loss. He's even got a demon living inside him. But he still chooses to see the good in people. And it's not like he's naive about it. He gets hurt, he screws up sometimes. But that belief he has in people, it's actually powerful enough to change them.
Yeah, you mentioned Gaara and Nagato. He even changed the nine-tailed fox. That's a powerful message, especially for kids watching this. But some of your notes mentioned something about how this connects to real-life relationships, too. What's that about?
It's how Naruto approaches relationships that's interesting. He has crushes, like on Sakura, but he doesn't let that stuff distract him from what he wants to achieve. His focus is on becoming Hokage and saving Sasuke, and he seems to get that he needs to work on himself before he gets tangled up with someone else.
So it's not that he's like against love or anything. It's more like he knows he needs to have his own life figured out before he tries to build something with another person. That's surprisingly mature for a shonen anime.
And it ties into those bigger themes that your reviews bring up. You know, that whole thing about conflict always coming back around, Madara Uchiha's crazy plan to create some kind of forced utopia. It's all about people fighting their own egos and trying to figure out what real peace is, not just power.
Okay, so we've got some deep philosophical stuff going on here, but this is still an action anime at its core. You said some reviewers were totally blown away by the animation, especially in the early episodes.
Yeah, the animation, especially before you get to episode 370, is just so dynamic. The fights have this raw energy and the movements are so fluid. You can really feel every punch and kick. But around that episode, something changes. The colors get a little duller. The lines seem kind of stiff. It's subtle, but if you've been watching for a while, you definitely notice it.
Huh. It's almost like they switched to a different studio or something. Yeah, I'd have to see that for myself. But at least it sounds like the music is consistently amazing. You've got a whole playlist here.
The soundtrack is phenomenal. It's got rock, pop, traditional Japanese music. I mean, it's all over the place, but somehow it all works. You've got those classic tracks from the original Naruto, like Sadness and Sorrow, right alongside Shippuden hits like Heroes Come Back. Yeah, even that folk opening new song is in there.
It's not just background music, right? The reviewers actually say that the music really makes those emotional moments hit harder.
Absolutely. Certain tracks become connected to specific characters, like Sasuke's theme, or even entire battles. It's almost like a whole world of sound that just pulls you deeper into the story. But speaking of sound, we got to talk about the voices behind it all. Your notes mention both the Japanese and the English dubs.
What I found interesting is that a lot of people were praising how much the English dub improved over time. It might have been kind of rough at first, but by the end, performances like Yuri Lowenthal as Sasuke and Dave Wittenberg as Kakashi are considered legendary.
Yeah, that evolution is another part of what makes the show so interesting. It's not just that the content got better, it's that the way it was presented to a wider audience also got better.
Okay, so we've got complex characters, thought-provoking themes, amazing soundtrack, and voice acting that really found its footing. But we can't talk about Naruto without addressing the elephant in the room, the filler episodes.
Ah, yes, the filler debate. I mean, with over 500 episodes, it's kind of inevitable that there would be some detours along the way, and honestly, some of them are just plain bad. But some people argue that others actually add to the world building and give you a chance to catch your breath between those really intense arcs.
I guess it all comes down to pacing, right? If you're binging the show, the fillers are going to be super annoying. But if you're watching it week to week, maybe they're a nice change of pace.
That's a good point. But even the biggest filler fans have to admit that they interrupt the flow of the story. And speaking of interruptions, the ending of the show, that's another thing that people seem to disagree on in these reviews.
Yeah, some loved it, others felt kind of let down.
Mm.
What were the main criticisms? Was it just about who ended up with who, or was it something deeper?
It's a mix of things. Some people felt like the power levels got way out of control, that some of the resolutions felt kind of like a deus ex machina. And yeah, the romantic relationships, especially Naruto ending up with Hinata and Sasuke with Sakura, a lot of people felt like those relationships weren't developed enough and that it felt forced.
So after hundreds of episodes, that final happily ever after just didn't feel earned for some people. It's a good reminder that even in a world with chakra and giant foxes, emotional payoff is still important.
Absolutely. And it brings us right back to that question we started with. Is it a masterpiece or a mess? Maybe Naruto. Shippuden is both. It's flawed and ambitious, but there's no denying that it's a show that leaves a mark on you.
Yeah, it seems like with Naruto, Shippuden, you kind of have to take the good with the bad, the amazing parts and the parts that maybe don't work so well. And I guess that's what makes it so interesting to talk about. But you said earlier that some people felt like this anime was more than just entertainment. What do you mean by that?
It's those moments when the show takes a break from the ninja action and really digs into those big ideas, like that whole pain arc, for example. You've got this villain who wants to end all conflict, create world peace, but the way he wants to do it is brutal. He's willing to cause a ton of suffering to get what he wants.
So it's not just your typical good guys versus bad guys kind of thing. Yeah. It makes you think about those really complicated real-world questions like, is violence ever justified, even if it's for a good cause?
Right. And that's where it gets philosophical. It's not just about Naruto learning a new jutsu or whatever. It's about him trying to understand that even a guy like Pain, someone who's caused so much pain, has his own reasons for doing what he does, even his own twisted logic, you know?
Yeah, it makes you wonder. If you understand why someone did something, does that make it okay? Does it make them less of a villain?
Those are the kind of questions Naruto Shippuden throws at you, and it doesn't give you easy answers. It leaves you wrestling with these really complex issues, which might be why so many people connect with it so much. They're not just watching the show, they're actually thinking about these ethical dilemmas.
And speaking of connecting with the show, we keep coming back to these certain characters that seem to get people talking the most, like Itachi, for instance. We talked about how complex he is. But why do you think he fascinates people so much?
I think it's because he represents that blurry line between hero and villain. On the one hand, he killed his whole clan, which is a horrible thing no matter how you look at it. But then you find out why he did it. It was to stop a rebellion that would lead to a war. It was to protect his little brother Sasuke. So then you have to ask yourself, could a good intention ever justify doing something so terrible?
And you mentioned before that he did it out of love, though it was a pretty messed up kind of love, but wasn't manipulating Sasuke into living a life of revenge pretty cruel, even if it was for a reason?
That's the whole debate about Itachi. Was he a selfless protector who sacrificed everything for his village and his brother? Or was he just a manipulator who basically doomed Sasuke to a life of darkness?
It sounds like there's no right answer there. You got to weigh the good with the bad, the love with the manipulation, and come to your own conclusion.
That's it. And that's what makes him such a fascinating character. You can't just put him in a box as good or bad. He's a good example of how even in a fictional world, people are rarely all good or all bad.
Okay, so we've got Itachi, the morally ambiguous anti-hero. And then there's Naruto, who seems to be the complete opposite. Always optimistic, always believing in people, even when they give him every reason not to. Is that why he's so popular?
Naruto's whole journey is about resilience and growth. He starts out as this outcast kid, desperate for attention, always acting up. But he never gives up on himself, and he never gives up on the people around him. That never give up attitude, that refusal to become cynical, that's what allows him to connect with people and change their hearts.
So it's almost like he embodies the show's message. Change is possible. There's always hope, even in the darkest times.
Exactly. And it's not just about beating bad guys with powerful jujitsu, it's those smaller victories, Changing someone's mind, earning their trust, proving that even a Jinchuriki, someone everyone's afraid of and hates because of the power they have, can be a force for good.
And that message really seems to resonate with people. You mentioned in your notes how Naruto's story inspired you to work harder, to focus on your own personal growth.
Yeah, it's that idea that we all have the potential to overcome obstacles and achieve our goals, even if we don't start out with a lot going for us. It's about perseverance, dedication, and believing that you can grow and change.
So it's not just about becoming Hokage, it's about becoming the best version of yourself. But, we've talked a lot about Naruto and Itachi, but there's a whole bunch of other characters in Naruto. Shippuden. Are there any others that the reviewers mentioned as being particularly memorable?
Oh yeah, for sure. There's Kakashi, for example, Naruto's teacher. At first, he's really mysterious, but as you learn more about his past, his struggles with loss and guilt, he becomes a really compelling character. He kind of shows that even the strongest shinobi have their own burdens to carry, their own battles to fight.
And what about Sakura? She gets a lot of hate, but some people seem to appreciate how much she grows throughout the show.
Sakura is a complicated character. Yeah, at first she can seem kind of shallow, focused on superficial stuff, but she goes through a lot of development. She becomes a really skilled medical ninja, a crucial part of Team 7. And her struggles, those moments where she doubts herself and then eventually overcomes them, they really resonate with people who can relate to that kind of journey.
It seems like her story is more about a realistic kind of growth, with mistakes and setbacks along the way. And then there's Sasuke, of course. Naruto's rival, his best friend turned enemy. He's definitely a character that people have strong opinions about.
Sasuke's really interesting because he kind of shows how tempting darkness can be. He's so consumed by revenge, so blinded by pain. And the choices he makes, the way he sinks deeper into darkness, they really make you think about how destructive hatred can be and how hard it is to come back from that.
And yet there's still a part of him that wants connection, that wants to belong. His relationship with Naruto is so complex, so emotionally charged. It's this constant back and forth between love and hate, understanding and resentment.
And that's what makes their dynamic so compelling. They're like mirrors to each other, reflecting both the best and worst parts of themselves. It's a reminder that even the strongest bonds can be tested, that even the deepest wounds can heal, but the scars are always there.
So we've got this really intricate web of characters, each with their own complexities and flaws and moments of greatness. And it's within their individual stories that the show's bigger themes come to life. It's not just about who wins the fight, it's about those internal battles they're all fighting, the choices they make and the consequences they have to face. But, we haven't really talked much about the symbolism in the show. Some of the reviewers said that was one of the most rewarding things about Naruto Shippuden. What are some examples of that?
Oh, there's a lot of visual and thematic symbolism throughout the series, like the recurring motif of eyes, for example. The Sharingan, the Uchiha clan's special ability, is a perfect example. It gives them incredible power, but it's also connected to loss, grief, and the potential for darkness, like a visual representation of the burdens they carry, the price they pay for their power.
So it's not just a cool visual effect. It actually has a deeper meaning tied to the characters' histories and struggles.
Exactly. And then you've got the contrast between light and darkness, which is often symbolized through Naruto and Sasuke. Naruto, with his bright orange clothes and his never-ending optimism, represents hope, while Sasuke, consumed by vengeance and always hiding in the shadows, represents despair.
But it's not as simple as good versus evil, is it? You see characters like Kakashi who kind of embody both light and darkness. He's struggling with his past, all the things he's been through, but he still chooses to guide the next generation toward a better future.
You got it. The show is always challenging those easy ideas of good and evil. It shows how even the most virtuous characters can have darkness inside them, and even the weak villains can have moments of compassion.
It reminds me of that quote from The Dark Knight. You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain, Naruto. Shippuden really explores that idea in a nuanced way, showing how the things that happen to us, the choices we make, and our own internal struggles can shape the path we take.
For sure. And that's what makes it so interesting. It doesn't give you simple answers or easy moral judgments. It shows a world where things are complicated, where characters make tough choices, screw up, and have to deal with the consequences of their actions.
And all of this is happening while these epic battles are going on. The fight scenes in Naruto Shippuden are legendary. They're known for being huge and creative and super intense.
Yeah, the battles are definitely a spectacle, but they're more than just showing off cool moves. They're often really connected to the characters' personal stories, their emotions, their beliefs. It's not just about who wins or loses. It's about what those battles represent, what they tell you about the characters and the world they live in.
And it's not just about brute force either,
Yeah.
right? There's strategy involved, clever uses of jujutsu, and a lot of emphasis on working together.
Definitely. The show highlights how important it is to be smart, to use strategy, and to use your own unique skills to overcome challenges that seem impossible. We see characters teaming up, combining their abilities, coming up with complicated plans to outsmart their opponents. And that focus on teamwork really reinforces one of the show's main messages. We're stronger together. Even the toughest battles can be won when we work as a team.
It's interesting how the battles themselves become like metaphors for the bigger themes the show is exploring. Teamwork, strategy, overcoming adversity. But it's not just about the action or the themes, is it? There's also this strong emotional core to the series, which is really amplified by the music. You've got this incredibly diverse soundtrack that just seems to capture the mood of every scene perfectly.
The music is a huge part of the experience. It sets the tone, it makes the emotion stronger, and it adds a level of depth that you wouldn't get with just words alone. Whether it's those sad melodies during moments of loss and sacrifice, or those high-energy anthems during the fight scenes, or even those soulful tracks during the quiet moments of reflection, the music elevates the storytelling to a whole new level.
It's almost like the music is another character in the story, guiding your emotional journey along with the actual characters.
Exactly. It really shows the talent of the composers and musicians who put so much effort into creating this world of sound that's as diverse and emotionally rich as the world of Naruto Shippuden itself.
So we've talked about complex characters, thought-provoking themes, awesome visuals, epic battles, and a phenomenal soundtrack. It sounds like Naruto. Shippuden has everything you need for a truly captivating viewing experience.
It definitely does, but it's also important to remember that, like with any work of art, people are going to have different reactions to it. Some people might not like the filler episodes, the pacing, or the controversial ending. Others might think those things are just minor distractions from how good the show is overall.
So it's not going to be for everyone, but for those who connect with that specific blend of action, drama, and philosophical stuff, it can be a really powerful experience.
Absolutely. And that's what really matters, finding those stories that speak to you personally, that challenge you, that stick with you long after you finish watching them.
Well said. But before we wrap up this deep dive, let's take a moment to address one last thing that came up in a lot of these reviews. This idea that Naruto Shippuden actually changed people's perspectives on life.
Ah, yeah. That's what makes a story truly great, when it's not just entertainment, but actually makes you think differently about the world.
So it's not just escapism. It's encouraging people to think differently about themselves, their relationships, maybe even their place in the world.
Exactly. The sources you gave me talk about people being inspired by Naruto's optimism, his belief in the power of change. They talk about how the series made them question their own ideas about good and evil and encouraged them to see things from different perspectives and approach conflict with empathy and understanding.
That's pretty amazing. To think that a fictional story about ninjas could have such a profound effect on people's lives.
It just shows how powerful storytelling can be. When we really get into a story that resonates with us, it can open our minds, challenge our beliefs, and ultimately help us grow as people.
And that's what makes this deep dive so rewarding. It's not just about summarizing the plot or analyzing the characters. It's about exploring how Naruto Shippuden connects with people on a personal level, how it gets people talking, thinking, and even changing things in their own lives. And I think that brings us to the heart of what makes Naruto Shippuden so compelling. That powerful mix of action, emotion, and philosophical depth. It's a show that can take your breath away with its fight scenes and then make you think about the nature of good and evil all in the same episode.
It really shows how talented the creators are. They're able to weave together all these different elements into a story that's both cohesive and engaging. They created a world that's fantastical but also grounded, where ninjas can fly and summon these giant creatures but still deal with real human emotions and problems.
It's that balance, that ability to take you on a wild ride while also making you think. that makes Naruto Shippuden such a unique and memorable experience.
And I think that's what keeps people coming back to it. Even years after the last episode aired, there's always something new to discover, a new layer to uncover, a new insight to gain from the characters and their journeys.
It's like that favorite book that you can reread 100 times and still find something new to appreciate each time.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
It really shows how deep and rich the storytelling is.
All right, so we've explored the characters, the themes, the symbolism, the battles, the music. We even talked about how the show can impact people on a personal level. But as we wrap this whole thing up, I keep thinking about what you said about how Naruto Shippuden affected you personally. You mentioned that it changed how you think about hard work and focusing on personal growth.
Yeah, and that's something that comes up a lot in these reviews. Naruto's whole journey from being this outcast kid to becoming this respected leader, it really shows what you can do with perseverance. He wasn't naturally the most talented ninja, but his willpower and dedication, I mean, he just pushed himself beyond his limits.
It's like the show is saying that talent can only take you so far. It's that constant effort, that refusal to quit that
Right.
really makes a difference.
And it's not just about physical strength or mastering jujitsu, it's about growing as a person, facing your weaknesses, and always trying to be better. Not just as a ninja, but as a human being.
You also said something about the show changing how you see relationships, especially that idea of working on yourself before jumping into a relationship.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, especially when you consider all the debate about who ends up with who in the show. I mean, Naruto, even with all his focus on becoming Hokage and saving Sasuke, he still has those normal teenage feelings of attraction and love.
Well, he's a teenager. It wouldn't make sense if he was totally oblivious to that stuff.
Right. But what's interesting is how he deals with those feelings. He doesn't let them distract him from his goals. He gets that he needs to grow as a person, become capable and responsible before he gets into a romantic relationship.
So he's not against love or anything. It's more like he understands that a relationship can only work if you've taken the time to figure yourself out first.
And that's a message that people can relate to, even if they disagree with who Naruto ends up with in the end. It's about prioritizing your own growth, becoming the best version of yourself before looking for happiness in a relationship.
So even the romance, or lack of romance for some characters, becomes about that bigger idea of personal growth and figuring out who you are. It's crazy how the show weaves those ideas into so many different parts of the story.
It shows how deep the writing is and how well the creators understand people. They're not just telling a story about ninjas, they're exploring how complicated human relationships are, how hard it is to grow, and how important it is to find balance in life.
And I think that's what makes this deep dive so cool. It's not just about explaining the plot or talking about the characters. It's about uncovering all those layers of meaning, those universal truths that people connect with on a personal level.
And at the end of the day, that's what makes a story really powerful, when it goes beyond being just fiction and gives you insights that you can use in your own life, your own relationships, your own journey of growth and self-discovery.
So as we wrap up our exploration of Naruto Shippuden, we're left with a question for you to think about. What parts of the show resonated with you the most? Which characters, themes, or moments stuck with you long after you finished watching? Did you learn anything from it that you've carried with you in your own life?
Whether you're a seasoned shinobi or just starting out in the Hidden Leaf Village, Naruto, Shippuden is an experience that's both rich and rewarding. It's a show that can make you laugh, cry, cheer, and think, sometimes all in the same episode. It's flawed, it's ambitious, and it definitely stays with you. And that's what makes it a story worth watching, talking about, and coming back to again and again.
So hold on to those reviews, put on those playlists, and maybe even rewatch the series. You never know what new things you might discover. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.